I'm David Luong, and you're listening to Trek Rant, the Star Trek podcast where I rant, rave, overanalyze, and obsess about all things Trek. This is a quick mini podcast which I'll be doing sometimes solo, sometimes with a guest, and as basically a supplement to the main Kid Clown Kicker podcast, our Geek Roundtable podcast, which you can also find on our YouTube page or at our official website, www.unitedgeekfederation.wordpress.com. For this episode, basically I thought that with the new Star Trek series coming out from CBS sometime next year in 2017, I've decided to indulge in some dream casting. Basically, what I did was, I asked myself, if I had complete control over the Star Trek franchise and CBS Paramount handed me a blank check to cast whoever I wanted into the new show, who would I cast? Again, admittedly, this is some self-indulgence on my part, and I'm not sure how some of my picks are going to go, how they're going to come across to some of you guys who are listening, but, here goes nothing. First off, I'm going to start with the lead of any Star Trek show, the captain. To me, the best captains are those who have this great commanding presence, a strong figure that you believe would be able to run an entire ship consisting of thousands of crewmen who are out there in deep space, away from any other major authority figures. Someone who could run that large a ship, run that large a crew, and do it effectively. I decided to go with an actress who I feel has this great, strong aura about her, and who's also no stranger to sci-fi franchises, Sigourney Weaver. Ever since Alien, she's been this sort of sci-fi queen, sci-fi goddess, and I couldn't think of anybody who had more of a powerful aura about her to run my hypothetical dream crew in the ship for this hypothetical Star Trek series I'm talking about. She just has, especially from Alien and other parts she's played, she just has this great strength about her. Someone who you can still relate to, who is ultimately a human character, who at the same time, if the shit hits the fan, she's still someone who's strong enough, smart enough, savvy enough to come up with a solution to fight her way out of even the worst possible situations. But who, once again, is this ultimately human character who you can relate to and who's not so far above you that you can't believe her as you, that you can't relate to that person. Plus, we've seen her in Galaxy Quest, who a lot of people jokingly call the best of the Star Trek movies. But we know she can do comedy, which is also a great plus for those lighter moments you want in any Star Trek series. So that Sigourney Weaver is definitely the person who I would cast as my ship's captain. Next, second to the captain, is the ship's commander. I decided to go with an interesting choice in that I wanted to cast Garrett Wang, reprising his role as Harry Kim from Star Trek Voyager. I know that might be a strange choice to some of you listeners, but my line of thinking was this. First off, I always felt that Harry Kim was one of those characters who got short-shafted in Voyager. He was a character who had a lot of potential as this young ensign who was way in over his head, being lost in this whole new quadrant and being the low man in the hierarchy, as it were. I felt that they didn't give him enough episodes to shine, because I did like Harry Kim, I did like the character, and I did like Garrett Wang and his portrayal of that character. So I thought it would be really terrific in a new Star Trek series to bring that character over, to bring Garrett Wang playing Harry Kim over to the new series, and see his evolution from the lowly ensign, you remember him from Voyager, to being this high command officer, this first officer on the ship. Sort of shades of Nightingale, one of my favorite Voyager episodes. But it would be amusing to see the development of this character. And I wouldn't have him be this, right off the bat, be the strong commanding first officer in the first episode. I would have loved to see his evolution as, okay, since his days in Voyager, he's been slowly promoted, and now he's the first officer, his first time as a first officer on a ship. And I wanted to see how he would play off a much stronger, in terms of will, I'm talking about willpower, character in terms of Sigourney Weaver's character, and how he would go from this character who might feel still out of his head, still out of his element, but his slow evolution to feeling like he's worthy of this role, that he's worthy of being a strong, commanding presence. And I think that the Harry Kim character, again, is a perfect character to explore that sort of evolution. I also think that by having Garrett Wang reprise his role as Harry Kim from Voyager, it's a great link to the older Trek series. So once again, Harry Kim, one of those characters who I loved from Voyager, and I would love to see get another chance in a new hypothetical series, especially in a role that really, really gets to see him evolve as a character within the series. So moving on from there, for my ship's doctor, yet another interesting choice. I've decided to cast Stephen Fry. Stephen Fry of Jeeves and Wooster, QI, Fry and Laurie, and basically of just general Stephen Fry fame. For me, Stephen Fry just brings this great, dry, sophisticated wit to the show. I could totally see him bouncing off a lot of the other characters, especially off my captain being portrayed by Sigourney Weaver, being able to offer her, as well as any other character on the show, this great advice with this kind of cutting, urbane tone. Plus, he's admitted in the past that he's a Trekkie, so that's always a super plus. So again, Stephen Fry is my ship's doctor. I think that would be a terrific choice just because of this whole presence, this wisdom that he brings with him. Next, another role that I consider very vital to any Star Trek series is the tactical security officer. Especially in this hypothetical show I'm building out, I'd really strengthen this role as somebody who almost has as much power on the bridge as the first officer, primarily because I like the idea of these potentially conflicting ideologies of a more pacifistic first officer and and I don't want to say aggressive, but in their own eyes, a more pragmatic military officer, military personnel. So, giving that some thought, I wanted to cast somebody who would almost play the part that Tasha Yar was intended to play, in that role that they wanted to create for Denise Crosby as Tasha Yar. And I say intended because I don't always feel that with Tasha Yar's case that they went the direction that they should have. But that's a different podcast that I'll get to in the future. In any case, I wanted that Tasha Yar type character. So for this role, I've decided to cast the incredibly versatile Rosario Dawson. I can see her totally playing that Tasha part, that hardened officer from a rough background who, based on her own experiences, feels that a phaser blast or a photon torpedo is just as likely to get the job done as diplomacy. Plus, with Rosario Dawson's great range, I can see her playing off that hardened, battle-ready officer role without coming off as a caricature or as unlikable. So basically, she would just be what Tasha Yar was intended to be, plus I would say a little more humanized than what they were able to pull off with Tasha. Plus, Rosario Dawson has admitted, much like Stephen Fry, that she's a Trekkie. So again, a great plus if you're a Trekkie and you're cast in a Star Trek television series. Next, I have my ship's science officer. For my ship's science officer, I've decided to cast Masi Oka of Heroes fame. Another actor who I feel is just criminally underrated, based on his performance in Heroes, as well as smaller parts in movies like Get Smart and television series like Hawaii Five-0. He just does a great job playing these geeky, eccentric, nerdy characters. And I love the idea of having this, out of lack of a better term, Starfleet fanboy as the ship's science officer. Somebody who studied everything Archer, Pike, Kirk, Picard, and all of these other legendary captains have done, and is essentially almost the fanboy of the series. Someone who just loves the idea of being out there, following in the footsteps of these great past Starfleet officers, and trying to live up to all of that. Plus, as the fanboy of the show, I can imagine him as totally being the character who a lot of hardcore fans like myself associate with, kind of our into the television show, the person who we put ourselves in their boots and we can totally relate to. So Masi Oka as this great fanboy, science officer, Starfleet fan who gets to live out his dream. So I would just love to see him fill that role. For my Helms person, I almost wanted a sort of a similar character, someone who just loved the joy of being out there in space, who loved the idea of just going out there and being able to helm this Starfleet vessel to explore strange new worlds and to convey that ultimate joy that comes with seeing these new planets and these new people on a day-to-day basis. With that in mind, I've cast the always delightful Kristen Bell, who, from what I've seen, has a lot of range and would bring this great nice brightness to the show. Much like Masioka's character, I see Kristen Bell's character as being the fans into the show, somebody who the hardcore fans as well as viewers in general can relate to, somebody who again gets to see these strange new worlds on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis and gets to just have her eyes wide open, totally loving the part she gets to play on this vessel. So both Kristen Bell and Masioka's characters would be these brighter characters who, again, fans can totally relate to. Last but definitely not least, we need a ship's engineer. I decided to combine this part with the role of the outside alien observer, which you always get in Trek series. That character who, as an outsider, as an extraterrestrial, is able to look at humanity from a neutral, subjective perspective. I wanted somebody who could play a great alien, and the one person who sprang instantly to mind, Jeffrey Combs, which I feel that's almost enough said. Jeffrey Combs has portrayed multiple characters in Star Trek. I think he's portrayed something like, I want to say 5 to probably more extraterrestrial alien characters, and they've all been very unique yet all memorable. And he's had to do it oftentimes under super heavy makeup. Just a list of characters he's played. He's played Brunt the Ferengi in DS9. He's played, of course, Wei Yun from DS9 as well, and my personal favorite, Shran from Enterprise. So with all that under his belt, I could definitely see him portraying an alien character in a number of different ways. You could take that role in so many different directions, but all of them terrific. He's definitely somebody who I can see as being as portraying a role a step away from humanity, and therefore able to just deliver these great cutting lines about mankind and to have that subjective viewpoint on how we interact with the world and how our viewpoints may be great or may be horrible or what have you. And like I said, Shran is a personal favorite character of mine, so maybe he'd end up as an Andorian engineer. I don't know. Of course, this is just one raving fan's dream, sort of my dream casting. So once again, to go through all of it again, I'd cast Sigourney Weaver as my ship's captain. I'd cast Garrett Wang reprising the part of Harry Kim as the ship's commander. For my ship's doctor, I'd cast Stephen Fry. For my tactical security officer, I would cast Rosario Dawson. For my ship's science officer, I would cast Masioka. For the helms person, I would cast Kristen Bell. And again, last but definitely not least, Jeffrey Combs as the ship's engineer / that outsider alien observer character. So what do you guys think? If I were to put you in charge of the Star Trek franchise and to give you complete free reign over who to cast, what would your dream crew look like? Would it look a lot like mine, or would you go in a totally different direction? Leave a comment on this YouTube page or visit us at our official website at www.unitedgeekfederation.wordpress.com and let me know what you think. Also, please subscribe so you can receive updates on future podcasts, not just this one, but our other podcasts, including the Kid Clown Kicker Geek Roundtable podcast and other shows coming up in the future. I'm David Luong, and thanks for listening to Trek Rant, a Star Trek podcast.